Hey everyone, welcome back again. So this will be our last session for today, and so we have Aishwarya and Prateek who will be talking on how they were able to sort of hijack 26 plus subdomains. So they are one of the top bug bounty hunters today, and it's a pleasure to have them here presenting their talk. Aishwarya and Prateek, over to you. You can start your presentation.
Thanks, Nikhil, for your kind words. Guys, we'll be talking today about how we hijacked 26 plus subdomains. So, the story started from the month of March, where I and my friend Aishwarya we decided to sort of learn something new. So, this is about us. We are basically final year CSE undergraduates. Talking about Aishwarya, he is currently a technology intern at RBL Bank. He stands in Bugcrowd top 800, and as always, he is a part-time bug bounty hunter. Talking about me, Prateek Thakare, I'm also a passionate bug bounty hunter, a CSE undergrad, and I love competitive coding too. And I'm also amongst Bugcrowd top 1000. So this will be agenda for today. So we'll be starting from the basics. Okay. So what is DNS, the CNAME, and then we'll be seeing how a DNS query is resolved. And then where do the developers make mistake? Where a mistake is done, which leads to subdomain takeover. Okay. Then we'll be going on through the basics of subdomain takeover. We'll also be walking through hunting for subdomain takeovers, and we guys like use subdomain enumerators for enumerating our targets. Okay, so why to use multiple subdomain enumerators? What's the benefit? We'll be seeing that. Then we'll be going through some common error pages, which are vulnerable to takeover. Then we'll be seeing a tool called as Subject. Subject basically helps you in gives you the vulnerable subdomains. Then we'll see how Subject works, what's the logic behind it, and then after that we'll go for automation, and then we'll exploit the subdomain takeover by taking over a vulnerable subdomain, and there will be some mitigation steps to avoid subdomain takeovers. Okay, so as I said, we'll start from the basics. First is DNS. What is DNS? DNS is nothing but domain name system. Okay, so for example, I have a www.xyz.com as a domain. Okay, now we all know that each and every server is mapped with a number, and that is nothing but an IP. Okay, so we as a human have tendency that we cannot remember these numbers very well. So to make them remember very well, a domain is mapped to this numbers. So what DNS resolution does is whenever you query www.xyz.com, the DNS resolver or the DNS server sends you the IP of xyz.com server. Okay. So after that, to access any of the documents on that particular server, you just query the IP. Okay. So you don't need to remember the IP. You just need to remember, or you just need to enter the domain. Next, we move on to what a CNAME is. CNAME is nothing but a canonical domain name. Say, for example, I want to host one page on any of the cloud service. We'll take the example of Amazon S3 bucket, okay, where I'm hosting my some of the static pages. Okay, so now I want that each and every user who visits my domain will be able to see the content of S3 bucket. Okay, whenever we make a S3 bucket, the format is like the Amazon AWS gives its own URL. For example, the bucket name dot amazonaws.com. Okay, so now I want this particular URL of S3 bucket to be mapped to my company name, company subdomain. Okay, so here is what the CNAME comes into picture. We use the subdomain and we map a CNAME to it, which is the our cloud service. Okay, so now whenever we query xyz.company.com, this particular subdomain will resolve to the cloud service. Okay, and we can see the content hosted on the cloud service. So this is the use of alias of domain name, that is CNAME. Now we know what was DNS, what was the concept of DNS. We had a walk through it. Now let's go how a DNS query is resolved. Okay, so in my browser, I'll enter sub.example.com. Okay, next, this query will be sent to recursive DNS resolver. Okay. Now the recursive DNS resolver will again recursively send the query and ask for if this particular sub.example.com has a CNAME to other domain or not. Okay. The recursive DNS server says, yeah, it has, and that is another domain.com. Now it will again tell, okay, give me the address of another domain.com. Okay, now this particular another domain.com DNS resolver will give the IP of it, which will be in turn sent to your browser, and it will be cached there. So whenever you go for sub.example.com, you'll be resolved to this particular IP, that is 1.2.3.4. Now I want to access the content. I'll just directly put sub.example.com, and there will be no resolution needed because the IP is cached in my local memory. Okay, so we can access the content. So this was all about how a DNS query is resolved. Okay, now to tell you the basics of subdomain takeover and where a developer can make a mistake in while making a subdomains or while removing them, we'll walk through a story. Okay, so let's take the example of my friend Aishwarya. Aishwarya runs an organization. Okay, so his organization is just a startup and he cannot afford to buy a own server with his public IP. So what he does is he opts to use a cloud service. Okay, now Aishwarya's company also buys a domain, that is aishwaryakendle.me. Okay, and for development purpose, now they are in the first stage of their site development. Okay, so for development purpose they set a subdomain which is dev.aishwaryakendle.me. Okay, you can see the picture in right here. Now aishwaryakendle.me has a subdomain dev.aishwaryakendle.me. As I said, they cannot afford a public server or a public IP or host their content on their own server, so they use a cloud platform, and they opt to use a Heroku cloud platform. Okay, so they will now make an app on Heroku and host their content there. So now let's see how this is done. Okay, so this is the Heroku dashboard. Okay, you can see you can create a new app here. You can choose the language of your guide. Okay, this is the dashboard. Now, after creating a new app, you'll be redirected to a page where you have to enter the app name and the region. Okay, so for the demonstration, we'll use dev app test as our app name and we'll create the app. Okay, so once we have created the application, we'll move to the settings. We can see that the app has been created and various details of app are here. Okay, now once we move to the domain section of this particular application, we can say that your app can be found at devapptest.heroku.com. Okay. When we visit this devapptest.heroku.com, it says that, hey, welcome to your new app. Okay, you can refer the documentation if you need deploying. So this confirms that, yeah, there's a app present in someone's Heroku account with devapptest as its app name. Okay, so now you can see there's a button here called as add domain. Okay, we can now map our custom domain to this particular application. So whenever we enter our custom domain, that will resolve to this particular application and the user can see content hosted on Heroku Dev App Test application. So we'll be using our subdomain, that is dev.aishwaryakenle.me. Okay, as soon as we click on next, we can see that our subdomain has been mapped to our application. Now we'll visit that particular application. So this is an overview of DNS settings of aishwaryakenle.me domain. Okay, so the domain provider is dana.com. Okay, you can see that we are setting a custom DNS here. Okay, the dana.com has provided us this domain. Now the domain is aishwaryakenle.me. Okay, in the subdomain records, we can set our as many subdomains we want for aishwaryakenle.me. Now we'll be setting them as needed. Now there are record type. As you can see, there are various types of records: txt, forward, cname, 4 times a. Okay. So we'll be selecting cname. Why cname? As I told, I am hosting the aishwaryakenle.me is being hosted on a Heroku application. Now we'll set the DNS. Now what is time to live? Okay, time to live is nothing but how long a DNS record should remain in DNS resolver cache. Okay, so after 5 minutes, the cache will be updated, and we can see the reflected changes on this particular subdomain. Okay, now the custom domain is custom DNS been modified. Now we'll dig the dev.aishwaryakenle.me. Dig command is useful to get the details of this particular subdomain. Now, as you can see, in the answer section, dev.aishwaryakenle.me has a cname devapptest.herokuapp.com. Okay, so now we'll visit the site. Yeah, it is cname as it is devapptest.heroku.com. Now we'll visit the site, a subdomain that is dev.aishwaryakenle.me. So when we visit the dev app dev.aishwaryakenle.me, we can see the same page which we saw when we visited our app link, that was devapptest.herokuapp.com. Okay. Now we have seen that how the company has set its Heroku application. Okay. Now after a period of 4 to 5 months, the web application has been created successfully, and now the company, the organization, decides to deploy the prod version of it and delete the dev instance as it is no more needed. Now let's see how the team does this deletion process. Okay, we are at the dashboard of dev app test. Okay, now we are in the settings page. Okay, we can see that we are in the same dev app test application. Now it's no more needed and we are going to delete this. Okay, after confirming, we can delete the application. You can see in the dashboard of this particular account that there's no app here. Okay, now we'll reload the dev.aishwaryakenle.me subdomain. Okay, now we have deleted the application, and after reloading we can see there's nothing here at. Okay, and this is the error of Heroku page. Okay, now wait a second. Did we observe that the team made a huge mistake while deleting the Heroku application? This is the screenshot of the DNS settings of that particular domain, that is aishwaryakenle.me. Okay, you can see that the subdomain dev.aishwaryakenle.me still has a cname devapptest.herokuapp.com. Okay, so they deleted the application from herokuapp.com, but the cname to that particular subdomain is still present in their DNS settings. So we saw that dev.aishwaryakenle.me was is still pointing to a Heroku application, which is no more. Now, I'll hand over to Aishwarya to explain you the basics of subdomain takeover. Now, I'll hand over to Aishwarya to explain you the basics of subdomain takeover. Now, I'll hand over to Aishwarya to explain you the basics of subdomain takeover.
Yeah, hello everyone. So the previous error page that we just saw clearly shows that the subdomain was vulnerable to subdomain takeover. So what is subdomain takeover? So subdomain takeover is nothing but claiming of an unclaimed subdomain of any domain by an attacker. Okay. So now let us see how Pratik will hijack this particular subdomain. Okay. So this was our error page that we were getting. Okay. So now Pratik will log into his Heroku dashboard and he'll create a new app. So now the app name need not to be similar as the CNAME record of that particular subdomain. So he has given the name as takeover dev and it says takeover dev is available and the app will be created in US region. Okay. Once the app is created, he will be navigating to the settings page and below you can see the add domain page, and we also have a link that has been given by Heroku with the particular app name, and it says that welcome to your new app, which means the application has created successfully. Now what he'll do is he'll just add the domain, the subdomain which was found as vulnerable. So it was dev.aishwaryakendle.me. So once that has been added, all you need to do is just visit that application. Now this is the current error page that you were getting earlier. And once we refresh it, we can see that we have got the welcome to your new app page. Now this shows that we have taken over that subdomain. You can host any kind of application, any kind of web page on this particular subdomain. Okay. So what has happened is like the app was not existing. Like the developer had deleted that application from Heroku, but he forgot to delete the CNAME record from the DNS settings of that particular domain. Okay. Now, what was our methodology when we started hunting for subdomain takeovers? So the first part was gathering targets. Like we need valid targets, right? Targets in the sense only those targets which has a bug bounty program or a responsible disclosure page. Then the next part was to enumerate subdomains because that's what subdomain takeover comprises of. So the main part is subdomain enumeration. You need to gather as much as subdomains as possible and check for vulnerable subdomains. So the checking for takeover part is covered by the subject tool. Then the next part is exploiting or taking over those subdomains. Okay, let's go through each of these steps one by one. Okay, so the first thing that we did was gathering targets. Now, gathering targets on a large scale. Okay, so what we did was we just use a Google Doc, let's say in title. So I want something within the title of every web page. I want a responsible disclosure page or a bug bounty page. So every URL that will be having a bug bounty in their URL or bug bounty, this string in the particular URL, I'll be getting that. Okay, but I don't have time to visit each and every page and copy this link, get yatra.com in my list, get coinza.com in my list. So I have another tool which will extract the URLs from a particular Google search page. So to install this tool, all you need to do is drag it over the bookmarks tab. Okay. Once this tool has been dragged, you can see it over here. All you need to do is just click on it when you're on the Google search page. Okay. When you'll be clicking it, you can see that we have got the URL list. Like a lot of data is present here, but we are currently interested in the particular URL. especially yatra.com, coinjar.com, and kraken.com, all these different URLs. So I'll just copy it, save it in a text file, and run unfold tool of tom nom nom. So what unfold tool of tom nom nom gives me is just the particular domain name. You can find it in its GitHub repository. Okay. Now, once we have gathered all our targets, the next part was to enumerate subdomains. Now, here I have mentioned a lot of different tools to gather subdomains. You can use Asset Finder, AMAS, Subfinder, any of them. Okay. But what I suggest is to use multiple tools at once. Okay. You can also use Google Docs to find subdomains because that might give you some unique results. So why did I suggested to use multiple tools at once? Let me show you the difference. Okay. So here I've got an example wherein I've enumerated subdomains of tesla.com. Okay. This is the first result is from the tool Asset Finder by Tom Nom Nom. And I have piped the output of this tool to a word count utility. So it gives me that we have found 140 subdomains, unique 140 subdomains. Okay, but if we use subfinder with the same domain to enumerate subdomains, and I have also passed its output to the word count utility using the pipe, you can see we have found 111 subdomains. So this straight away gives a difference that Asset Finder is enumerating 140 subdomains and Subfinder is enumerating 111 subdomains. So better to be on a safer side, we can combine multiple results from all the different tools and get a list of unique subdomains. So there might be a case wherein uh, one tool will give you a unique subdomain. The same subdomain will not be presented to you by the another tool. So what you can do is you can just combine all the outputs of this tool, sort it uniquely, and get a list of unique subdomains. Okay. So what we have done up till now is gathering our targets on a large scale, then enumerating subdomains for it. Okay. So now, before getting into the subject tool, let me take you through common error pages. Okay, so these common error pages are from different cloud services, which straight away shows that that page is vulnerable for subdomain takeover. Okay, so the GitHub page. GitHub also has an option to host static sites. So if a site or a URL is not configured with GitHub or the repository has been deleted, GitHub gives you such an error called 404 file not found. So the site configured at this address does not contain the requested file. So GitHub is trying to search an index.html file, but what has happened is the repository has been deleted either or the user does not exist. So it isn't able to find the index.html file. So it gives me an error such as 404 file not found. So then the next part is Heroku. As we saw earlier, that it was vulnerable to subdomain takeover. There's nothing here yet. So what has happened there was the app was deleted and just the CNAME was kept in the DNS settings. Okay, this is a unique one. This is from Shopify. So Shopify is an online shop application wherein you can create your own shop, sell anything, buy anything, and you can configure it with your own domain. So what has happened here was the site.com has deleted the Shopify application to which it was having a CNAME record. And what we did was we just logged into Shopify and added this site.com in its custom domain, and we were able to take over its Shopify page. Okay, so if you find any of this page, like for example Shopify, you can assume that it's vulnerable for subdomain takeover. Okay, now let's come to a tool called Subject. So what we have done up till now is gathering targets, enumerating subdomains for it. Now we need to check whether those subdomains are vulnerable to subdomain takeover or not. So Subject is a subdomain takeover tool written in Golang, designed to scan a list of subdomains concurrently and identify ones that are able to be hijacked. Okay, so let me give you a demo of Subject. Okay, so I have a list called domains.txt. Okay, and right now I am targeting Prateek Thakare.me, his site. and I have a list of his subdomains. Okay, let's say I have enumerated subdomains for prateek-thakare.me, and I have stored this list in a domains.txt file. Okay, now to install Subject, the steps are in the repo. I'll share this slide with you. Then after installing, all you need to do is let's check the help of Subject. Okay, so Subject, how Subject works is you can specify all the different options. So the option that we are currently interested is in -w string, which means a part to word list. So the word list here says the list of subdomains. Okay, so we'll pass our subdomain list domains.txt to it, and we'll give a thread option. So Subject also has a thread option, so we'll give 100 threads. Yeah, so remember that we are running this on our VPS. So for Subject, you need a strong internet connection. The same thing, if you do it on your local machine or your local network, you won't be getting accurate results. So it's better to not use threading options with Subject. Okay, now we can see that we have found uh, some, we have got some results. So the first part says what backend service or what cloud service is this particular subdomain using, and the next part is the particular subdomain. So we have got GitHub, Heroku, and Azure. Okay, so how did Subject found this sensitive or this vulnerable subdomains? Okay, so let's see how it works. Okay, so I am currently in the repository of Subject, and Subject has a file called fingerprints.json. Okay, so what Subject internally does is it runs a dig command against the subdomain and checks what is its CNAME, what is the status of that subdomain. Okay, now let's say we had found Heroku, right? So if the service is using a CNAME, if the service has a CNAME called Heroku app, like within the CNAME, if there's a string called Heroku app, okay, then it will verify it's using Heroku. Now again, to check further, it will check whether the error page was showing no such app.html file. So at the previous slides, we were getting such page, no such app, and we had our NX domain as false. So I'll come back to this later. So what Subject does is takes the dig record and matches it with this JSON file. Okay, anything that matches and becomes true, it will give it as vulnerable one. Okay, so now once we have found subdomain, a particular subdomain is very vulnerable, we need to automate it. Like we can't just enumerate subdomains for a single domain, then pass it to Subject and check whether it's vulnerable or not. We had to perform this on a large scale. Okay, so how did we automate it? So we have just written a small script, and this script is modifiable. You can tweak it according to your own needs. Okay, so the first part is the /bin /sh. So it says that says to the terminal that we are executing a shell script. And the next part is file name. So how I want this script to run is like I want the script so /script name, and what I'll be passing to it is the list of my targets. Okay, so in the previous slide we had enumerated numerous targets and stored it in a file. So all I need to do is pass this file to the script. This script will pick one domain from it, enumerate subdomains for it, and pass those subdomain list to the Subject command. So Subject command will store it in a file. Okay, so let me take you through each and every command. So file name $1 says that the first argument that we are passing to this script. If there were two arguments, we will be accessing the second argument as $2. So we just want the file name. So the file name is stored in a variable called file name. Okay, now how does this while loop runs is like while read URL do and then the script and then done. Now this is an less than operator. What this does is like it reads the file name and reads the file name line by line and passes it to this while loop. So you can see this as an arrow, like the file name is being read and passed it to this while loop. So at every line that line will be accessed through this URL variable. So URL is actually a variable. So while read URL do, so we have got our first line, let's say prateekthakare.me. This is just a print statement. Then the next part is we are using the subfinder tool, so to enumerate subdomains. Subfinder dash d dollar URL. So to access this URL, we'll be using the dollar sign. Okay, so dollar URL, and we'll be storing it in a file called $url.txt. So we'll be getting subdomains from subfinder. Then the next part is asset finder. As I told, we'll be using multiple tools. So for demonstration purpose, I've only put up two tools over here. You can combine outputs of multiple tools as your need. So the next part is asset finder dash dash subs only to enumerate subdomains for the particular given domain, and then the dollar URL or the URL for which we want to enumerate subdomains. Then I'll be passing it to T. T command splits the output. The one first is splitted in your file, then this next one is splitted on your command line. So T dash A, which means append. So we want to append our subdomains to this url.txt file. That's why dash A. Otherwise, it will be overwriting that file. Okay, we want all the subdomains. That's why we are appending it to the same file, url.txt. So there now asset finder and subfinder both will be enumerating some commons or duplicate subdomains. So the next part is sorting it. So we'll be sorting it uniquely. So sort dash u url.txt, and we'll be storing it in the same file url.txt. Okay, now once we have got our subdomain file ready in the url.txt, the next part is to run subjack on it. Okay, so subjack dash w, which means the word list that we are passing to it, and then the output. So the output will be stored in $url underscore takeover.txt. So once you have run it, you will get the list of subdomains that were vulnerable for subdomain takeover. Okay, but subject just gives you the possibility that it's vulnerable. The next part is to be done by you to check whether it's actually vulnerable or not. I'll come back to this part later. Okay, so this was one kind of automation. Now, to check whether a particular domain is vulnerable or not, like subject has given me just the possibility, right? So to check whether a particular domain is vulnerable or not, we'll refer this repository by add overflow. Can I take over XYZ? So this repository basically contains a list of services and how to claim those subdomains with dangling DNS records. So this particular repository has a table of different cloud service providers and whether they are vulnerable or not. So let's check for Heroku. Yeah, so Heroku, we can see that the fingerprint was no such app, and that was the previous page that we had got, no such app, and it says that edge case, which means it is vulnerable and it may not be vulnerable. And the steps to take over are given in this issue tab. Okay, so here are all the steps that you can perform to take over that particular subdomain. Okay, so let's say you found GitHub, then GitHub, it says GitHub is vulnerable. There isn't a GitHub page site over here. If you have found an Azure, so it says clearly vulnerable and you can find the steps. Okay, so any service that you're finding through subject, you can search it over here within this repository and check whether it's vulnerable or not. Okay, so the other automation is quite interesting, and most of the hackers follow this kind of automation. So what this diagram says is like there's a tool called find domain. So what find domain does is it gathers output from different uh, data sources or different tools for enumerate subdomain, and then find domain also itself enumerate subdomains. What interesting feature find domain has is like you can use webhooks to send subdomains. Webhook, you can use it with Discord or Slack or Telegram or any other kind of messaging services or Trello or your email. Okay, what find domain does is it stores uh, the subdomains in a database. Let's say we are using PostgreSQL. So it stores the subdomains in a database, and what what we do is we configure find domain to run as a cron job for, let's say, every 12 hours or every 5 hours. Okay, I want find domain to run after every 5 hours, and I have connected my find domain with her Discord webhook. So what find domain does is, let's say if it has found 10 subdomains for tesla.com and it has stored it in the PostgreSQL database locally. So after 12 hours, let's say find domain has again executed and it has found new 20 subdomains. So what find domain will do is it will send me those new 20 subdomains to my Discord server, or Discord server that I have configured with find domain. Okay, so this was just, it was sending me new subdomains that has been enumerated. So for using find domain keeps you ahead in the game. Okay, so with find domain you can use your own scripts and you can use data analytics to configure it with the subject tool, and you can pass those new subdomains to the subject tool and send notifications to your Discord webhook. Webhook are great to implement and easy to implement. You can check the particular documentation to check whether they are vulnerable or not. Okay, so this was regarding find domain. So this is another kind of automation. So remember, you can use this when you're using a virtual private server. You can't keep your local machine turned on 24 hours every day, right? So if you're using VPS, it's turned on continuously, and you can run such kind of cron jobs to automate it. So subdomain takeover was just a simple example of automating and using cron jobs for particular vulnerability. You can use cron job for many different purposes. Okay, now let's come to a different kind of subdomain takeover, wherein the CNAME is actually available to be bought by someone else. So there are cases when the CNAME that a subdomain points to is available to buy. In that case, the attacker can directly buy that domain and host his or her content. Okay, let me show you an example. So we have a domain, let's say abc.vulnerable.com, and this domain is pointing to a subdomain, for example, dev.vulnerableXYZ.com. Okay, now when I checked the dig record of abc.vulnerable.com, I found that the status was nx domain, and this dev.vulnerable.xyz.com wasn't pointing to anything. Now what I did was I browsed to domains.google.com, which is a wherein we can buy domains from Google, and I searched this particular domain, vulnerableXYZ.com, and I found that it was available to be bought by someone else for 860 rupees per year. So now to exploit this, all I need to do is I can buy this domain, vulnerableXYZ.com, and after buying it, you have access to its DNS settings. So within those DNS settings, we can create a subdomain called dev.vulnerableXYZ.com, and you can host a page. So what will be happening is, when you have a actual page that has been hosted on this site, you can find it getting reflected on abc.vulnerable.com. Okay, so this is another kind of subdomain takeover that we encountered, and many sites have such kind of vulnerabilities hanging. So after you have exploited or taken over that subdomain, you can try to escalate it. By escalating, I mean to say, uh, how what hackers do is, you have seen many different phishing sites. So using subdomain takeover, we can create a lot of different phishing sites which are pointing to that legitimate organization. Then the next part is malware distribution. We can distribute different malware by making the user click on particular link, and the user will verify that link by seeing a particular organization and will be clicking it blindly. Then the next part is cookie stealing. You can take over a subdomain and make a user to visit that subdomain, and at the backend you can write a script which will steal that user's cookie for that particular application. So this can also escalate to account takeover. Okay, so the mitigation steps are pretty straightforward. Either the organization removes the DNS and CNAME record, or it claims the vulnerable subdomain. Okay, So some points that are worth noting is every 404 error on a subdomain does not mean it is vulnerable to subdomain takeover. Okay. I've seen people asking me like I've found a 404 page whether it's vulnerable for subdomain takeover or not. So that's not true in each and every case. Okay. The subject tool sometimes gives a false positive result. So you can't completely rely on subject tool. Automation is not the only check that you have to do. You can check manually too. Okay. And Heroku and Azure requires a credit card to be added to add a custom domain name. So you need a credit card to access a particular service. One more service that I had found is called as Pantheon, and Pantheon is also a cloud service, and there were a lot of vulnerable subdomains that I had found, but it requires a $50 basic plan to add a custom domain to that particular application. Yeah, so that wasn't possible. Now let's take over Azure subdomain. Okay. So in our previous subject demo, we had found prod.prateek.thakare.me was vulnerable to subdomain takeover, and it was using Azure. Okay. So let's copy it and check its dig record first. Yeah. Now just take a look. I've we found a dig record, and the status shows me NX domain. Okay. And we have got a C name called prodapp.trafficmanager.net. Now let me take you to the subject tools fingerprints.json and let's search for Azure over here. Yeah, there's a fingerprint for Azure. Now let's verify it with our dig record. Okay. Yeah, so the service it's using is Azure, right? And we had a CNAME called trafficmanager.net within our video. Yeah, within our dig command. So the CNAME was trafficmanager.net. So yes, verified. And we had our NX domain as true, right? Which means the status was NX domain, which means NX domain is true. If it says NX domain as false, which means the status is not NX domain. It might be a no error status. Okay. So hence subject tool has verified that this particular site is vulnerable for Azure subdomain takeover. So Azure has different kind of services. One of them is traffic manager, which is used to manage the traffic coming to that site. Okay. So now I have logged into my Azure dashboard and I'll be searching traffic manager over here. Okay. Now I need to create a traffic manager profile to take over. So we'll click on add. And now as you can see over here, like we are getting the name as blank.trafficmanager.net. So here what we need to enter is the CNAME. So only the first part of the CNAME will go in that text box because we want to create an application with that particular CNAME. We want to uh, take over that particular CNAME record. We'll create a traffic manager profile. It says deployment in progress. Yeah, before that, let me open this links, and you'll find that we are having trouble finding that site. That means that site is not pointing to anything. We have put an error. Yeah, this was stored in my cache. Let me again refresh it. Yeah, so for Azure, this kind of page is returned. So a 404 page is not vulnerable. Okay, so now the resource has been created. Now in Traffic Manager, to make this Traffic Manager URL point to something, we need to add an endpoint. Like where is the content that you have hosted? We need to host some content. So I will make it point to my own VPS. I'll give an IP address. You can use any kind of website or GitHub page to make it point to. So I'll use the IP address of my VPS. So I have set up an Nginx server on my VPS. Yeah, now let's try visiting the prod.app.traffic.manager.net, the CNAME record. So you can see that there's a default Nginx page, and let's try refreshing our main domain. So as you can see that we have taken over Prateek prod.prateekthakare.me. I hosted a poc.html file, and you can see subdomain takeover by mining. So now let us again check the dig record. Okay, the earlier dig record was having a status as nx domain, and the um, main domain was pointing to prod.app.trafficmanager.net. Nothing else after this. Okay, now let's check it again. So now, if you check, we have got a status as no error. And if you check the CNAME record, our domain is pointing to product.trafficmanager.net. But again, product.trafficmanager.net is pointing to a valid IP address, which means it's not a dangling DNS record. Okay. And hence we have successfully taken over this particular subdomain. And I think that's it. And you can connect with us on these links. We'll be sharing our slides on the null.co.in page. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Aishwarya and Prateek. This was one of the one of the best presentations that I've ever actually seen. It was really informative, and I'm sure most of them actually liked it. We could see that in the comment section actually. So thank you so much. All right, so I think now coming back to the next part of today's thing is basically we are going to be talking about the feedback sessions and all of that. So now, as part of the feedback, what I would suggest you folks to do is basically go ahead and sort of we are already there on Twitter and a bunch of other places on the internet. You could reach out to us directly, and if you have any sort of a feedback that you have for us, you could sort of let us know there. And also, if you're interested in presenting your talks or your presentations, or you want to give a tool demo or something like that, so we've also given a link to a Google form in the comment section, and also we have put it up on our Twitter handles as well. So you can go there and sort of fill in the form, and we should be able to sort of reach you back and get all the details and get started with that. So that is one thing. So also for the next month's session, so the available dates that we have is 18th of July and 25th of July. So I would request you all to sort of go to our Twitter profiles, and so we have sort of put in a poll there, okay, as to which one do you think would be best for you guys to join in. So you can go ahead and give us your vote there, and we should be able to sort of conduct the next meet on that particular date. Okay, I hope you guys have liked today's session, and I really hope to see you guys in the next upcoming sessions as well. Thank you so much. Thank you for being there with us. See you guys next time. Thank you.